Welcome to Practical Steiner with your host, me, Ronda. This is a podcast wherein I ask the general question, what might Rudolf Steiner say about this or that, whatever is of interest to me? Today, I'm beginning a new kind of section of Practical Steiner that is going to air at first monthly, and it's the first video that I'm doing, which we'll see how that goes. And this series is conversations with Brooke Delorme about a book series that she's in the midst of writing that uses anthroposophical understandings of the world. It's a series of historical fiction, but it encompasses many, many, many themes that are of interest to me, stemming from Steiner. And so I thought it'd be fun to talk to Brooke on a monthly basis, just picking out various themes from the book. So we're going to start today with the theme of the doppelgänger. First of all, I should say hello, Brooke.
Hi, Rhonda. Thanks for having me here. Thanks for doing this. I'm really looking forward to it. It seems really fun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to, and I'm going to talk a little bit more than usual at the beginning of this podcast, but then mostly, hopefully, it shall be you. So I just want to start by reiterating something we have talked about in previous conversations on Practical Steiner, but just what is this book series and why are you writing it and what's the kind of main theme of it? So I can wax eloquent about that, or do you want to kind of do some summation on that?
You're welcome to start. I would
Okay.
add that historical fiction, while true, it is contemporary historical
Oh,
fiction.
that's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I can all go ahead and admit it that just for practical reasons, people should know if they want to find it. You can also look in magical realism genre.
I think on Amazon, I chose metaphysical and visionary genre, but
Oh goodness.
yes.
Okay. And just it's a Ronda quirk that I prefer fiction and historical fiction, which is covering, history as it's happening now, I guess, whatever the word
Mhm.
for that is, real-time historical fiction. I prefer that over magical realism just because I think our secular materialist culture
Yeah.
can't seem to put matters that involve spirit anywhere but
Yes.
in some kind of word like magical, which I think is not correct, but it's okay. Whatever gets people to go looking for your book is fine. Okay, in Practical Steiner, episode 3, in the last 20 minutes, if people would like to reference that, you gave a little synopsis, I would say, of this book series that you're writing. Now, that was 2 years ago now.
Wow. No,
Yeah.
1 year.
Was it 1 year ago? Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, I've only been doing this podcast 1 year, but it was like the 3rd episode, so it was maybe like in January of 2025. It's a while back. And so here's what you said. It's a 7-book series set in contemporary America, a kind of document of the years 2012 through 2030. Let's see. We have a main character named Apophenia Gold, which is the title of the first book. And this character has a level of clairvoyance. Now, her name, Apophenia, the first part of that, means seeing patterns. And in a minute, I'm going to ask you to talk a little bit about that. But to go on, she also has a few other abilities related to the clairvoyance, seeing people's thought images, seeing other people's thought images. Um, and let's see, she also sees voices as colors. So tell me a little bit about seeing patterns. What is this ability that some have?
Right. And so the word apophenia is, it's a little bit funny to use this word.
Mm.
It was first used historically in Greek by Aristotle, and it had to do with categorization. And it's come in and out of use, but the modern usage for the word was actually to describe a pre-schizophrenic state of seeing patterns where there weren't patterns. But in modern times, let's say in the past 20 years, it's actually come back into use in this meaning that I've chosen to give to it, because words are just the meanings we give to them, which is seeing patterns that other people might not. And I think that that ability is, it's like on this spectrum, which these other skills that Apophenia, the character, has. So we have her seeing patterns that others might not, but we also have her with synesthesia, which is like seeing voices as colors, or this merging of sense perception. And then further on the continuum, we have the actual clairvoyant perception, such as seeing auras or other people's thought forms.
Fascinating. All right, this is surely a tiny sidebar that I'm going to engage in right now because it's my damn podcast. I remember once, this is some years ago, you mentioned that you, Brooke, see patterns, but you were talking about it like, I'm trying to remember the context, but like in, I don't know, like situations, world, societal situations. What is that? So is this what we're talking about? And
Yeah. And a lot of people see these patterns, because this is, so it's on this spectrum of like rational, there's a pattern here that I'm observing, to kind of irrational, I'm applying a pattern because I don't know, I'm anxious, or I'm in conspiracy theory minded, and I'm seeing everything as a pattern. So you can see that there's a spectrum there. If something happens every day, the postman shows up at noon every day, that's a pattern, and it's pretty realistic for me to predict that it's going to happen again. And so sometimes people see patterns prematurely because we are pattern recognizing creatures. And sometimes they see them accurately.
All right. Well, you know what? We're going to be talking about that another day on another podcast. Yeah. That's very interesting. Okay. So, in addition to Apophenia Gold as one of the main characters that is going to be a thread throughout this whole series, is the long-lived, you said a kind of Count of Saint Germain character named Michael, who is the one gathering the 12, basically, in a broad way, you could say, which is one of the other themes in the book we'll cover in another podcast. 12 people can change the world.
Right.
So that's kind of, and here is a kind of a nice little sentence that sums up what's happening in this book. A truth seeker, that's Apophenia Gold, on a spiritual quest, and the other people she's engaged with trying to understand what to do in this world.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's with that, I want to probably turn it over to you and the one theme we're going to focus on today, which is the doppelganger. Just I will say, as also a bit of overview, that one of the things I love and so appreciate about your books that I've read so far, and the first one's already out. The second one will be out sometime in this year, right?
Well, 2026, yes.
Yeah, sorry, New Year. Yeah. That's what I meant, 2026. What I appreciate is this part of a truth seeker trying to understand what to do in this world. This book really offers to me a lot in that way, which in my experience of reading and listening to just about everything that people say or is in the news or anywhere, there's a kind of dearth of solution. Mm-hmm. And I just think this book is so important. These books, I mean, I love them for many reasons, but one of them is for that Apophenia is searching, and it's not like she's some Superman and that she knows exactly what to do and is going to tell me what to do. It's not that kind of thing. It's like, how can we all figure out what to do in this world? So that's just thank you, Brooke, for these books, because they're really inspiring for me that way.
That's very sweet, Rhonda. Thank you so much.
All right, let's go.
Okay. You want to pose your question? And then I'll pull up the slide.
The question, what was my question?
What is the doppelganger?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Yes. I just wanted to Yes, of course. The theme for this podcast is, what is a doppelganger? What
Mm,
is Steiner? What does this mean, doppelganger? I mean, most of us, I have heard the word. Usually people use it to mean, oh, look at that. They
yeah,
use it to mean you're double. This is someone who looks like you. That's
right,
how I always heard it. And that is not at all what it means in the Steiner sphere, right?
right.
So maybe, yeah, just what does it mean
Yeah,
in this?
sure. Okay, so this is one of those things in Steiner's work that it's very easy to kind of skip over the first couple times you read these books or these lectures, and then you're like, then you go back and you keep seeing it referenced, and it's really, really important. And so I started working with it as a, let's say, imaginative practice, but I don't mean that in the higher sense of imagination. I just mean that as a meditative practice. I started working with the idea of my own doppelganger sometime before writing the first book, and that's why it appears in Apophenia Gold as a feature, because I think it's trying to familiarize oneself with one's own doppelganger is an important, let's say, preliminary step to actually encountering it, right? So Steiner describes this in multiple ways, and also describes it um, in a way, in several ways where you'd think maybe there are different kinds of doppelgangers. I did look it up. At least in esoteric science, the German word used is doppelganger,
Mm.
and sometimes that's translated into English as double. Sometimes it's left as doppelganger, since obviously the word has a meaning that we know in English. So the easiest to understand descriptions are in How to Know Higher Worlds and Esoteric Science. And there's very specific descriptions, and I have later slides that kind of pull at those. But basically, read chapter 9 in How to Know Higher Worlds and read chapter 5 in Esoteric Science. The doppelganger is the accumulation of your lower self and your karma that you encounter when you are at the threshold of the spiritual world, and it becomes the lesser guardian of the threshold. So Steiner presents the spiritual world, the entry or the threshold of the spiritual world, as a situation where you face two guardians. One is the lesser guardian, which is your own accumulated karma, lower self, and the higher guardian, which is, I don't know which books say this, but is Christ.
Oh gosh. All right. So let me just ask a question real quick. He's talking about both the situation that you are engaging in spiritual research and the situation where you've just died.
Oh, yeah, and every time you go to sleep. So that's the thing, because we're not
Oh.
conscious. We don't have these experiences. Most of us, let's say me included, are not conscious of this. But Steiner says that upon every time we go to sleep, we enter the spiritual world. And so every time we cross that threshold, we encounter our own lesser guardian, but we don't have it in a fully conscious way. And there is this implied warning, which is explicit in other places. If you do not encounter these guardians consciously, then your entry to the spiritual world is like not lawful, and that leads to types of instability or you know let's say clairvoyance that goes along with paranoia. So that would be on the continuum of mental illness.
Fascinating.
Hmm.
Not lawful according to spiritual laws is
Yeah,
what that means.
yeah, yeah. So there are other places in Steiner's work where other or seemingly other doubles are mentioned. There's in a well-known book called, or a lecture series called Geographic Medicine, which is GA 178.
Mm.
He describes an harmonic an harmonic double. I'm not managing to produce this word.
Tough one.
And in Secrets of the Threshold, which is GA 147, Steiner is describing his own mystery plays and explaining how those mystery plays uh, portray a character experiencing a luciferic double, which is in that case the karmic double. So I'll just move on, and we can talk
Hmm.
about the different ways that I understand this double, like providing us information. So the general idea that I understand about the karmic double is that it's about seeing oneself objectively.
Mm.
And it's very hard to see ourselves objectively. But if we were to actually encounter ourselves as a third party, that is seeing oneself objectively. And Steiner is saying that this actually can happen at a certain level of spiritual development. And going along with that, if you see yourself objectively, you also start to perceive your own karma in your past lives. And through that, the spiritual world in an objective sense, as opposed to, we have our own internal world, but that's subjective.
Yeah. Whew. Okay. I think you should just go ahead.
Okay. So these are the quotes from How to Know Higher Worlds and Esoteric Science. And I'll only read the one on the left because this references something that you said. So, a truly terrible spectral being confronts him, and he will need all the presence of mind and faith in the security of his path, which he has had ample opportunity to acquire in the course of his previous training. So that is describing this ghostly, spectral, terrible being that confronts us. And this is the doppelganger that is how Steiner describes it in How to Know Higher Worlds.
Yeah, and like right now, I'm trying to imagine like somebody's listening to us right now, right?
Yeah.
And doesn't know Steiner, and
Yeah.
Like, how come it's so terrible? Basically, could be a question, right?
Right.
I mean, because if I think of looking, well, let me do this exercise where I look at Ronda like I would look at, I don't know, the person that works at the grocery store. So if I do this exercise, which by the way, I really want to do, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
But where you go, oh, I can see, you say these things that are really ignorant, and you say these things where it looks like you're very thoughtful and you understand some things. And you're like, basically, you could see, it's very easy to see how other people do or don't have themselves together, but that's harder for yourself. So like, what a great exercise, that is.
Right.
But like, how does it get to that realm of like terrible, spectral, you'll need all the presence of mind? You're like, what's it filled with? Like, what's going on there in this double?
So you have to imagine it is your accumulated karma. So it's not just this lifetime. It's all of it.
Uh-oh.
And you're not comparing yourself to other average good human beings. You're actually comparing yourself to your potential, which is like angelic.
That is a really key point, Brooke.
Yeah.
That is a really key point you just said. I didn't have that understanding.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Oh yeah, because he says that in Esoteric Science, the difference in between what you're meant to be and what you are.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, but are we so terrible?
Well, compared to what our potential is, yes, that's the point.
Now, is this the whole essence of that phrase, know thyself?
I think know thyself is like a tiny snippet of pointing at it. You have to know thyself. But then, there's so many levels of know thyself. So
Yeah.
It's there's a lot of levels of know thyself, and we could say that in the simplest way, I'm trying to know myself as a personality this lifetime. And that's relatively achievable for someone who spends time in self-reflection. But in order to really go through this doppelganger experience, that's confronting all of your past karma. And that means all of your past lives.
Yeah, it's kind of unfathomable to me at this moment. I mean, I have said this many times in my podcast that now I'm going on, I think I'm at 3.5. Let's see. I started studying Steiner in fall of 22, 25. So, just 3+ years, right?
Yeah.
And so all up until then, and I'm, almost turning 60, I never had karma and reincarnation, as I call them, tools in the old thinking toolbox, where I can go, oh yeah, here's how that works. karma and reincarnation. So these things are, God, they're so slow. I feel like they're so slow getting in my head to try and understand what is this. Why is it terrible? Oh, karma. Yeah. Oh, past lives. Oh, yeah. It's very foggy still,
Yeah.
but okay, I can get a glimpse of, yeah, that could be terrible.
Yeah. I mean, you just think the likelihood is you're probably, doing better this lifetime in terms of your moral development than prior lifetimes. And and
I
then
might
you
be home with
compare
that
that
one.
to a saint who's, alive today and ask yourself, how far do I need to go?
Yeah. And, the other thing I thought when you were saying, yes, it's also the experience meeting your double that you have every time you go to sleep. And I just immediately thought, well, that might explain why people don't often remember their dreams. I mean, maybe
Mhm.
it's not very fun to
Right.
remember this experience.
Yeah. I think that's part of it. I think part of the reason we don't remember past lives is because it's so hard to confront bad memories about our life in this lifetime. Can you imagine doing that for dozens and dozens of prior lives?
Yeah. And just, I mean, as far as the Steiner understanding, so we have to go through all this. This is now I'm talking about when we die. We have to go through this meeting this guardian, right? And then the other guardian, and we'll skip over a bunch of stuff. But there comes this point where then you spend like half of the time that you've been on Earth. So if I died tomorrow, I would then spend 30 years um, watching my life, right? In reverse, uh, everything that like all the effects I've had,
Yeah.
I guess good and bad. I mean, and that one, yeah, like I don't have any choice. If I think that way, I'm like, yeah, I see the horror immediately.
Mhm.
Just think
Mhm.
like, do I have to? I'm already sorry for some of that stuff.
Right. Yeah. That's it. That's exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah. All right. So now, is this a good moment? I want to
Yeah,
now
go
just
ahead.
talk a little bit about here. So your first book, Apophenia Gold, and the doppelganger appears, and she, of course, is one of my favorite characters because it's kind of fun how you treat it. And so maybe it's a good time to read that section in your book where Harriet first appears. All right. Apophenia Gold. I guess that.
Yeah, because you have the blur on, it's hard.
Oh, I
I'll
got
show
the
it.
blur
Yeah.
on. Oh, there you go.
Um,
There you go. Okay.
there you go. Okay.
Apophenia Gold. I guess we should just briefly say Rose C. Lane. That's what I'd say if I were watching this podcast. Wait a minute, I thought you said this was Brooke Delorme.
Right. So, there's a long literary tradition of using pen names, and it's a book, it's an art project, it's a series, it's an art project, and that's the name I like to see on the art project.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
All right. So here we are in Apophenia Gold, and I'm going to read from page 79, which is the first place I'm pretty sure that Harriet appears. Okay. Oh, that's 78, Rhonda. All right. So it appears, she appears because there's this moment where Apophenia is kind of ruminating on having met this Michael, and what is it going on here? Who is this guy really? He's kind of a random stranger. He calls himself a magician. So she's having these thoughts within herself, and she's saying, "Man, maybe I didn't vet him right." And her work involves vetting people. So she says, "I always vet my sources. I always travel carefully. What was I thinking? Accepting that credit card from a stranger." Right? And so she's having this kind of dialogue within herself. She's saying, I don't know, I'm just going to read it because I think it's fun. And I don't know where it's going to start to make sense for someone. So I'm going to start here. No, she spoke to herself, pushing the fear away with all her inner force. But it came back, grabbing for her throat, stronger than ever. This fear that she's been, ruminating. How come I didn't vet? And blah, blah, blah. She was alone here in the dark of rural Georgia, a place she knew not at all, with a bunch of elite secret handshake creeps in a creepy old plantation full of some godforsaken, horribly disturbing history. And those people tonight were asking her to do something much more sinister than play poker. And she had no idea what was going on. And they did. She was going to be exposed any minute, no doubt, dragged downstairs to some dungeon to have her heart cut out or be forced to do something worse to someone else and then blackmailed forever. A never ending cycle of extortion, torture. Thought spinning out of control. Apophenia turned and caught a glimpse in the mirror. And there she saw a beast like figure, a wraith of a shape, with its arms all around her and its mouth pressed right up against her right ear. She began to struggle against it in earnest now, trying to push its writhing body away from her own. But as she fought, her hands constantly slipped out and away from grasping its insubstantiality. It had its hands around her head now, pressing its fingers into her eye sockets. She was trying to pull them out, and like a bad dream, unable to make her own hands work right. She could feel herself getting weaker and fainter. And then a thought flickered across her mind. Stop fighting. Suddenly everything went still. The beast pressed against her, paused too, then very slowly lifted its head and pulled away from her ear, blinking myopically, as if wondering what was going on. Apophenia exhaled, and the wraith released its grip on her arms. I guess I could stop there.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. So
oh,
I should say the book is not scary. Nobody should worry.
oh
That's
no,
probably the
I just
scariest
said the
scene.
scariest part about,
Yeah.
didn't I?
Yeah, it's not a scary book. But this confrontation, literary confrontation with her own doppelganger is presented as scary because I think whether or not that's literally how it happens, I think that's an accurate presentation of what it's like for a person to really confront their own, you know, their own accumulated karma.
Yeah, and there she is in the midst of that, and I mean, somebody might read that and just recognize it like, "Oh, that sounds like a panic attack," or
Yeah.
however somebody can, um, identify with that scene, which is you're in the midst of something,
Yeah.
and it's scary, you're scared. So
Yeah.
your thoughts are spinning out of control. That's really what I'm wanted to read,
Right.
is all the far way that you can go in your head.
Right.
And you're just making stuff up. Where they gonna take her to the dungeon? They're gonna cut her heart out, like, um, we all do that. I think most people engage in that in some way. I know I have, and it's really helpful to go, "Oh, yeah, right, that's that thing that one does when one even if you don't feel scared, it's a scared place for you to be talking like that. This could happen, and that could happen, and, oh my god, and what if this?" And then she, um you'll have to read the book to find out how does she get out of that? Like, well, obviously, I read the part, "Stop
Yeah.
fighting."
Yeah. And so this references this really, or it's inspired by this brilliant thing that Steiner said, which is essentially to go through the period of time that we all were living in then and are living in now without making it worse. The key is mildness, like gentleness. And so I think about that whenever I think about interactions with other human beings with whom I might have a challenge. And I'm not 100% successful on this, but the idea that if we bring warlike energy or fighting energy, it makes things worse. And if we bring mildness, it makes things potentially better.
Yeah, and, that's a whole other podcast we could do, Brooke, which,
Yeah.
we should, and we have spoken before, you and I, on this podcast about mildness, and, I'm always, because mildness isn't no, it's n some people I know, I've come across them, many of them in my life, really value mildness already.
Yeah.
They want that. They really are nonplussed and upset if you raise your voice, and I am not one of those people, because I don't know why, but I'm just saying, out of whatever my upbringing and everything. I mean, I don't want to be screamed at. It's not that. It's just that I don't mind raucous. I don't mind woohoo. That's kind of part of what some people don't want. They want everything very quiet, and they want you to speak very civilly at all times. And for me, I'm like, yeah, speak civilly. That's good. However, when you speak civilly and say really crappy things that are coercive because you've got a nice tone, I'm not going to appreciate you for that. So I guess I feel like on this whole mildness thing, it's so important because there's some kind of middle ground that I need to get to, for that I can say it to myself and get behind this concept because it's a tough one for me to get behind. I'm just
Yeah.
like, "No, I don't care. You can scream, you can yell. That's not important. What's important is, what are you saying?"
Mhm.
But anyway, I just sort of just digress from my own point, which is the mildness thing within the Steiner guidance. It's different. He
Right.
he talks about it, and it's not about, like, pretense or pretending you don't feel strongly about something. It's more just like you presented it, which is when you say to yourself, "Okay, I have decided that I wanna work for stuff that helps and not lend my energy to stuff that doesn't help." That's what it's about. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. We could talk more about mildness, but should I bring up the slideshow again? And
Please do.
okay. So let's see. We've got moving. I'm not going to read this quote from Esoteric Science, but chapter 5 in Esoteric Science presents the same situation from a different point of view. And actually, this is now I want to share a different slide. This is
Mm.
this is an important thing about Steiner's books and also his work, because his work is so prolific. There were, let's say, 28 books, and there were 6,000 something lectures. But what he is doing, particularly with the books, is trying to present the same issues from different points of view. So what this picture is something from a specific lecture where Steiner described these like 12 valid worldviews. And it's a fascinating idea to say that materialism is a valid worldview just as much as spiritism is. And in this chart, they're laid out in a zodiac or a clock-like format. So the ones that are opposite each other actually are opposite ideologically and
Uh-huh.
thematically. So realism and idealism are opposite each other, and realism transitions into dynamism, monadism, and then ends up at spiritism. So there's a transitionary component to this chart. But what I'm trying to get at is it is possible to look at this doppelganger phenomenon from any point of view. And so the point of view that's presented in How to Know Higher Worlds is probably what we would call pneumatism or spiritism. So pneumatism is pneuma meaning spirit. So it's the idea that everything is inspirited, has a spirit component. Psychism, from soul, psyche, everything is ensouled. So these
Mm.
so let's assume that we're looking at the bottom left of this chart: psychism, pneumatism, spiritism. And I think that in How to Know Higher Worlds, the doppelganger is presented in that quadrant because it is
Mhm.
presented in such a being-like way. And yet I have the opinion that um, Steiner perceived these things as actual beings. And I'm not sure how you would perceive these things from the upper right quadrant of the chart, for instance: materialism, sensationalism, phenomenalism. Okay, so going back to the
Mm.
idea that what is going on with all of these different presentations of the doppelganger in different books is an attempt to help us understand it based on what our inclination is for understanding. Like, I personally think I'm pretty inclined towards a spiritism or a pneumatism point of view of the world. I tend to want to see things that way. Other people might really need to see it from a really materialistic psychological point of view, which is, yeah, everyone's on a path of moral development, and it's important to encounter your lower or less, less good moral forces in order to clean them up. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, that's really fascinating.
Okay, so now we get into this kind of confusing thing, which I have encountered. We were looking at an essay in one of the anthroposophical magazines a couple of weeks ago and talking about this, which is in other places, Steiner, specifically this GA 178, which is the book called Secret Brotherhoods when it was printed. Steiner talks about an ahrimanic double, which aligns itself or joins itself with a human being once they're born and is influenced by the literal physical geography of the place where one lives.
What?
And so, again, I'm not going to read these quotes, but the picture that's given in this specific lecture is that medicine or health treatments need to be associated with the geography of a place. And maybe the implication is that by moving around, we experience different geographical effects. One of the ideas in this lecture is that North America has a particular physical configuration which causes I think the magnetic forces to be very strong on us, which causes materialism and like death forces to be stronger here. But it means we have to be stronger to counter them. Okay, the other place that this is mentioned is the mystery plays. So on the left-hand side of the screen are the 4 mystery plays. These are really complicated plays that Steiner wrote. They have a lot of characters. They take hours and hours and hours to perform. And I've never seen them, but I have read the book. The 2 later plays, The Guardian of the Threshold and The Soul's Awakening, deal with one of the characters, at least 2 of the characters, encountering their own doubles in different ways. And so today, in preparation for this conversation, I was looking this up to try to find other places that I knew the double was referenced, and found this lecture from GA 147, where Steiner is describing the experience of the characters in the mystery plays encountering their doubles. And it's worth reading this lecture because he makes it clear that everyone has a different experience, and everyone is so unique in their development that what they are going to experience on the threshold reflects that. And some people have really purified their thinking forces but are terrible in their will forces, etc. So yeah. Okay.
Wow.
And then the last thing I'll say is I have looked for this concept of the double in other spiritual esoteric literature, and I did find it in this one place, which is Boris Moraviev was he was a Russian Christian esotericist who was writing in the 1960s. So it's possible he knew of Steiner, but he wasn't associated with anthroposophy. And he describes in one of his books something that is very clearly at the threshold, you meet your personality, which is the results of your karma. And this is the first time you see yourself objectively. So I felt like, okay, this is good to find this reference in it's of course it's esoteric because this is not this is not like mainstream stuff, but it's good to find it in some other spiritual tradition.
Yeah.
And we don't need to look at that slide. Okay.
Oh, Steiny.
It's just a pretty slide that I made, which is kind of like the overview.
Yeah. So is it a good time to just mention a couple of other things where the doppelganger appears in Apophenia Gold?
Sure, go for it.
So there are lots of mentions throughout Apophenia Gold, because basically from that scene that I read, and Apophenia stops fighting, not to give too much away, but then they kind of, become friends a little bit. Apophenia's, but it ends up she's stuck to her.
Yeah.
So Harriet's kind of stuck to Apophenia, and in fact, Harriet tried to go away, and she couldn't. She found out that she couldn't. But they can talk, whether it's telepathically, doesn't matter. they have conversations in the book, or Apophenia will think something at Harriet and she'll get it, and so they interact, and the overall theme is that.
Okay, we just lost a connection. Now we're back. So, Rhonda, do you remember where you were at?
Yes, I was saying that Harriet stuck to Apophenia throughout the whole book, and just so you know, in the next book too. But Harriet, when she first appears, she looks awful and scrawny and yellow fingers and scraggly hair, and her dress is all muddy. And the better that Apophenia thinks, basically, is how I can figure it, the better Harriet looks. Her dress dries out a little bit. She's less yellow fingered and her hair looks a little bit better. So, I mean, that's just kind of fun. And is that something just that is a fanciful thought process of yours, or?
Well, I mean, yeah, of course it's a fanciful thought process and it's for a literary purpose, but the way I understand what Steiner's saying is we are responsible for this doppelganger that is our karma until we have purified them.
Yeah, so then she's like biofeedback
Yeah.
personified for Apophenia throughout the books.
Yeah.
So if let me see. Yeah. And I guess she's a very big help for Apophenia, just on this theme of, in these books, here's this truth seeker. She's trying to figure out what to do in the world. And she can see the results of, bad thoughts, or her own fear. If she's consumed with that, she looks over at Harriet, and she's like a little hunched, more, and that's fun, in the books. But it's also like, I don't know, for me personally, it was quite thought provoking, because I said to myself, this is a fun thing Brooke has created, which is that there's this little character over there and you can look at her. But I'll bet you, Rhonda says to Rhonda, you pay enough attention, Rhonda, you can see those results.
Yeah.
You can see how it happens when you think bad things about somebody who's standing right over there. I bet you could see that if you wanted to,
Yeah. Yeah, I'm glad you saw that, because that's what it's about. It's like, I mean, Steiner says this in other places, which is as we work on our moral development, we become, necessarily we see the karmic results in some form of the actions that we're taking as we take them. And right now, it's probably just like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. I feel bad. But in the future, it will be an actual perception of what might happen or what is going to happen because of what I just did.
Yeah, I mean, there have been very rare occasions in my life, but where I found that that's particularly easy, if you want to attend to that in you, is when you hang out with kids, because they, bless their hearts, on their little faces will be, if you hurt their feelings, if you speak too loud, if you're unfair, if you're sarcastic, all of those things, they're just, you can see what happens. And I mean, that was a real help to me one day when I just prayed, hallelujah, something made me realize what speaking sarcastically to a 5-year-old did. It was just a terrible day. I was just like, Rhonda, you
Right.
gotta never do that again. You can't do that to a kid.
Right.
Gosh. Anywho, let's see, back to the fun stuff. Well, just one other couple things about your book and this doppelganger, which is that some people see her and some people don't.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is there some kind of guiding principle for you for it, who does and who doesn't?
So there's a few characters in the book who are essentially wise characters. And they're the ones who are depicted as seeing her. And these are pretty idealized characters. I don't know if I've certainly never met someone like the Michael character or the Miriam character, these people who are living a very long time. And also the Esmeralda character sees the doppelganger. And I don't, I have no idea if that's what it's like But I think it's useful to point out that there are wiser people in the world, and they are able to perceive a person's spiritual development, which a person might not perceive about others or even about themselves.
Yeah, speaking of Esmeralda, I'm going to read this a short bit.
Okay.
This is from page 114. And so Apophenia shows up at this Esmeralda. She's an older lady who's kind of a preacher and wise woman type. And so Esmeralda says, "Who's your friend?" Esmeralda gestured at the wraith, now standing awkwardly next to the stove, fidgeting with a knob. Apophenia paused, momentarily unsure, then answered, "Harriet. She is, it seems, stuck to me. Neither of us knows how to free her." Esmeralda started chuckling, then full on laughing, then belly laughing until she was shaking and her eyes teared up. "Oh my, that's a good one. Ain't never heard that one before. Ha ha! Can't figure out how to free her. Ha!" Harriet was alert. Apophenia straightened up in her chair, feeling a little embarrassed, and asked, trying for lighthearted, "Why is it so funny?" "Because she's your doppelganger. She's your double. She can't leave you, and you can't leave her." Sorry, and then I was going to read this other bit. Just Apophenia looked at Harriet, who stared back at her wide-eyed, as if nothing had been explained, and she was still helpless. Apophenia held up a finger to indicate patience. As soon as Esmeralda had said the word doppelganger, Apophenia had thought, "But of course, how could I have not figured that out? Of course, that's what Harriet is. And now she's my responsibility."
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, which is, I guess we're nearing the end of the time that I can keep you, Brooke. But this is the theme of, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. You bring this character into your book to help show how one must self-correct in order to be someone who wants to work towards solutions.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly. And that we are responsible for our prior karma, our prior lives. And yeah.
and that there are things that you can do. And that was the last thing I was going to mention. Later on in the book, there's a just a point where Epiphania looks over and Harriet's looking bad again because of all these bad thoughts Epiphania is having. And so Epiphania just stops. She takes a breath. She looks at the sun, the
Mm.
sunlight, and she just prays for strength and tolerance. Um, and that is simple, that's very simple little scene there, but I think it's just as profound as it gets, which is, do okay, you don't have any ideas. You don't know how to do the things. You don't know. She doesn't know Epiphania. There's a lot she's dealing with, really big contemporary issues. She doesn't have a handbook for how do I deal with evil? How do But this kind of, if you have this concept, I guess, or this idea of I can it's my responsibility, the way that I think.
Mhm.
And nobody else, like there's nobody else that's going to take care of Harriet for me.
Right.
I have to do that. So how do I do it? And to me, these are intermediary steps. I've experienced this too in my life. All right, breathing help. Exhale is a good one. You could
Mhm.
add that. Add exhaling. Add stop. Just stop. Interrupt this thought thing that you've got going on. Stop it. Yeah. So those are yeah, I just will reiterate, Brooke, thank you for
Oh,
writing
thank
these
you.
books and in such a way that they're just good stories, too, and fun and uh, interesting, and they kind of have an authenticity to me about them. All these characters, you're a serious person who's really thinking of these things, but that doesn't mean there's not room for humor and for understanding of a variety of a kind of person.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right. Do we want to say anything else about doppelgangers in the Steiner sphere before
I
we?
I think I covered the thoughts I had about it. Yeah. Do you have
Yeah,
more thoughts about it?
I don't. I mean, I have many, many notes as always that just help me be jumbled in the things I'm trying to say to you. So I think we'll leave it at that. Thank you for that presentation that you made. The write ups and with the pictures of that was helpful and interesting. All right, so we have not picked our next topic, have we, Brooke?
Nope.
All right, well, I'm going to pick that, and we will see what we talk about next in the series. Does is the series overall called the Apophenia Gold series, or does it have a bigger title?
I think it's called the Apophenia Gold series because that's, the website URL I'm using and the Chiron, the @Apophenia Gold that I'm using. So I think that's what it's called. But yes, book 2 has a different name. It's Mercury's Riddles.
Yes, highly recommend, people. And can we also recommend if people want to kind of read? I mean, it's kind of fun, but it's also could be a little confusing. Like you have a Substack, which is the Journal for Apophenic Research, which Apophenia Gold has a journal for apophenic. So it's but people can follow this Journal for Apophenic Research, right, on Substack and
Yes.
read about some of these matters and your thoughts on a lot of these themes that appear in your books. Yeah.
Yes, and so again, sort of it is kind of humorous to make a Substack that is named after this fictional website that the character has. And that was my intention in doing it, but of course I'm using it as my Substack for this project. So I talk about, Steiner and stuff like that on it, but I also talk about sort of, this question of how do you see through the pattern, see the pattern, see through the pattern, see through the matrix. What are the conspiracies of concern to us today, and are they conspiracy theories or are they real? Like all of that is touched on.
It's great. I have signed up, and I just had a thought. You could have like a little drama that you create. One day, Apophenia Gold shows up on your Substack, and is like, "Wait a minute, you took my
You took
Substack
mine.
name. Who are
That's a
you,
good idea.
Brooke DeLore? Who are you?"
That's a good idea.
All right, Brooke. Well, thank you very
Yeah.
much,
Thank
and
you. Thank you, Rhonda.
yeah, look forward to whatever our next conversation will be.
Okay. Thank you, Rhonda.